Hello, everyone. I am Danny Terrell, and I am your host for this conversation today. The series is called When You Move, I Move. This is conversation number 3, presented by Danny Terrell and the congregation. We are talking about ballroom realness today. I am super excited to introduce my panel for you all today. But before we do that, there are some things that I must do. We cannot move forward without acknowledging the land that we are on and our ancestors. We are on the traditional land of the first people of Seattle, the Duwamish people, both past and present, and we honor them with gratitude, the land itself, and the Duwamish tribe. We acknowledge that we are on land that is stolen from the traditional home of the Coast Salish people. The Duwamish ancestors were killed, brutalized, and stripped of their humanity. We lift up their work, we hold their pain and their joy, and we honor them with our work today. We come from enslaved African people that endured countless acts of torture and humiliation during and after the Middle Passage, and we're still feeling that torture today. We bring into the space the thousands of Africans that did not make it to see this land. The work we do today are on their backs and shoulders, and on the backs and shoulders of the original people of this land, our ancestors who now guide us. We sit in the space to honor African people and their descendants and to give back to the original people of this land. Trans, queer, gay, two-spirit, and non-conforming ancestors saw it fit to fight for our rights to be seen, to be heard, and to have a place in society that we will not hide in the shadows anymore. Their work has moved us forward, and yet we still have more work to do. We use this space to call their names, to continue their work, to fight for the next generation of Black LGBTQIA+ family members. To our ancestors, we see you, we thank you, we invite you into this space so that we can lift up your names and honor you with our work today. All right, folks, we are going to get started with this conversation. Again, I am Danny Terrell, I'm your host. The reason I have these conversations because I believe it's important to make sure that Black people have a space where that we can talk, be it public or in private. A lot of times we are so generous with our space and our time and our gifts that it is not honored in space. So I want to make sure this space is held sacredly for Black people. Our panel are from the diaspora. They identify so many different ways. I will bring them in. I ask that you honor the space with your comments. Please, no violent or traumatic comments, no triggering comments. If you have to question if the comment is triggering or if the question is triggering or violent, maybe you should not be making that comment. If you do make violent or triggering comments, we will remove you from this program today. So with that said, I'm going to open it up and start introducing our panel today. First up, we have someone who has an amazing brain. Dr. Stefan E. Wallace is, let me read that bio a little bit. Dr. Stefan E. Wallace is a research epidemiologist and an internationally recognized public health, social justice leader with more than 20 years of sexual public health experience with diverse populations, including LGBTQ and MSN populations, and more than 25 years of social justice community mobilization experience. Dr. Wallace is also known in the house ballroom community as the iconic Stefan Balanik, chairman president of the iconic House of Balanik Incorporated. Let's bring in Dr. Stefan E. Wallace. Hello, love. We got unmuted. There you go.
Hello, hello.
How are you?
I'm well. How are you?
I am good. I'm tired. Let me not lie. I am great, but I am exhausted. But I'm actually really excited to be here with you today. So as I bring people in, I just want you all to give me just a little bit of your entryway into the ballroom scene. So if you don't mind doing that for us.
Sure. My introduction in ballroom started in the late 90s. It was like 1998, 99. And my first category was bass. I've walked several categories since, including American Runway, Pretty Boy Realness, and most recently, Sneaker versus Sneaker or Sneaker Villain. Blahnik is my fifth ballroom house, and I think the thing that I offer and contribute to ballroom now, most of all, is leadership development, scholarship, as well as community mobilization and community development work.
Awesome. Thank you so much for that. Next up, I want to bring in Swamp Zaddy, is an interdisciplinary artist and scholar from Sunflower, Mississippi, who is most concerned with building utopias for Black, trans, gender variant, and disabled communities across the globe through installation art, performance, scholarship, and sounds. Swamp Zaddy is the founding member and co-creator of Ghetto Heaven Collective and the Kiki House of Arcadia. Swamp is also a DJ, a producer for the Kiki House of Blindex, based in Sao Paulo, Brazil. Swamp curates DJs, commentates, and walks the categories of face and commentator versus commentator in the ballroom scene. Welcome, welcome, welcome.
Hi.
Did I say that right? Blindex?
Yes, you did. Thanks for asking.
You know, I've been working on that all day. Swamp Zaddy, can you please let us know, how did you enter the ballroom scene and the Kiki House scene?
Yeah, definitely. So I grew up around ballroom. My brother was the father for the House of Ninja in Chicago, and I would go to balls with him. He would just bring me along, and I would watch him get ready, watch his house get ready, and that's how I was introduced to the scene. But at a very young age, because me and my brother are 12 years apart, so I think I was like 11 or 12 going to the balls, and he was in his 20s. So that was when I was first introduced to the scene, and I didn't become active in the scene until pretty recently. Seattle had a history of ballroom, and then the scene kind of got revived a few years ago by some organizers, and through that I DJ'd, and then decided that I wanted to throw balls myself, and yeah, started a collective to organize those balls, and then now we're the Celestial House of Arcadia, and here I am.
Let's not sleep on your DJ skills. I just want to not pass that by. I don't want to sleep on that part about it also. Because the first time I heard you, I was like, wait a minute, where are you from? Because it's only certain people that can sound that way DJing. And you were like Chicago. I was like, okay, that is why. So anyway, I just wanted to like highlight the fact that your DJ skills, outside of everything else you do, is beautiful. But them DJ skills got me like, who is this? Like, I want to know more of them.
Thank you so much to me. Thank you, Danny.
You're welcome. Thank you, Swamp Zaddy. Next, we are bringing up Carla Rons, is a hip hop and house artist, activist, and musician born in Southern Indiana, now based in Seattle. A rising star in the Pacific Northwest ballroom scene, his live performance incorporates aspects of Vogue, runway, and extravagant fashion. Carla Rons' 2019 album, Raw Honey, was described as uplifting by the Seattle Times and credited as a significant step forward. Carla Rons is a major artist to watch in the budding Pacific Northwest music scene. Let's bring in Carla Rons. Hello, my love. How are you?
I am well, all things considered.
Hey, that's true. Can you give us your story of ballroom in Kiki?
My story is a short story right now. My journey in ballroom really started in 2015 when I met my forever first mother, Jade Dynasty. And I learned everything really from her. And we started the House of Luna, a Kiki house here in Seattle. And threw a few balls together, did a lot of community organizing and events. And that was really kind of the the beginnings of everything for me, ballroom. And then after House of Luna ended, we reformed the House of Noir a year ago. Yeah, 1 year ago. And so me and House Mothers Lucci had started the House of Noir, and now we are continuing the work that was started those years ago. But yeah, that's the story that's currently being written.
Hey, keep writing that story. I love it. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Next, we are going to bring in the face. Tina Shea Monet is a vibrant, outspoken trans woman of color from Seattle, Washington. She is the overall mother and founder of the House of Monet and is known for her face. She's snatching trophies and otherworldly confidence and charisma. Outside of the ballroom scene, she is a freelance model, designer, entrepreneur, and overall entertainer in the Pacific Northwest. You can follow her on all social medias at Tina Shea. What's up, Mama? How are you?
Hi, everyone. Hello, hello, hello. I'm doing absolutely wonderful. I'm so happy to be here.
She doing the most. She like showing all us up. We're going to have masks with matching things, and we just like, look, this is a Sunday. We going to try to chill. She's doing, I love, I live for the most, always. Can you tell us about your journey through Ballroom and Kiki?
Yeah, so my journey in ballroom started about 2 years ago when my mother, similar story to Carla Ron's. Hey, Carla Ron's.
Hey, bro.
My mother, Jade Vogelslang, actually introduced me to ballroom in the physicality sense. She actually took me to my first ball, which was the Zodiac Ball hosted in Portland, Oregon. And I got to walk face for my first time. She told me to spectate, but I'm like, girl, I'm gonna walk because you only got one shot. So I walked and I ended up winning on my first ball. It was so amazing. And like, that was like the foundation for how I started everything. And I'm so grateful for her. Love her down.
Love it. And while you try to be cute, you covering up that face. If you snatching trophies, don't be covering up that face.
I mean, we need to show the face. We can show the
face. There you go. See, I just want people to see the face. To see the face. That's all. Okay. Next up from Portland, Oregon, we have Pasa Flora is the father of the Kiki House of Flora, founded in 2016 from Portland, Oregon. The Kiki House of Flora also has a blossoming chapter in Denver, Colorado. Father Flora walks Vogue, Film, and Runway, European and All-American, and Bazaar. They have also thrown I can never say that word. Y'all know what I'm trying to say. You know, tongue-tied. Kiki balls in Portland, Oregon between 2017 and 2020. I'm going to get that word one day. Let's bring in Pasa Flora. Hello, darling. How are you?
Hi, I'm good. How are you?
I'm getting there. Y'all giving me some energy, so I do appreciate that. Y'all, look, I need this today through the screen. Can you tell us about your journey, your story?
Absolutely, yeah. I came into the ballroom scene actually mostly from up in Seattle. Like there was Kumari Suraj who threw some really amazing balls down here around 2016 that drew me into the scene locally in Portland, and I started, winning a couple categories here and there. It was just giving me a lot of the creative outlets that I needed at the time. So desperately, and so I got to meet a lot of amazing people in between Seattle and Portland. Some community organizers, as a couple of them were mentioned, like Jay being one of them, threw some really cool balls up in Seattle in the House of Luna. And yeah, just kind of a House of Flora. The Kiki House of Flora is my house that I started with my friend Lee. And we started that 2016 springtime, letting things bloom. Now we're here.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Next up is someone that I see every week and that I love dearly. They're just family to me. Aisha Noir. Some of you may know her as Randy Ford, is a Seattle-based creative dancer, choreographer, actor, artist, curator, and educator. She has been featured in CD forums Showing Out, Contemporary Black Choreographers, Bumper Shoot Festival. She has been a featured dancer in Ben de la Creme's Beware of the Terror of Gaylord Manor, and Kitten and Lou's Camptacular and Jingle All the Gay. She is also part of the Washington Black Trans Task Force, working on a housing initiative to provide Black trans women and femmes temporary to semi-permanent housing. Her community work also extends to the Seattle Tacoma Kiki ballroom scene with the Royal House of Noir as the night and house auntie Aisha Noir. Let's bring in Miss Aisha. Y'all know I just want to sing that song, Aisha.
I know, right? Ain't it good too?
Okay, anyways, that about that song. Talk to me, love.
Yes. Hello. How did I get in here? My very first mother was Regine Dynasty, and my sister was Jade Dynasty, who then became my mother. I was also part of the House of Luna with Carla Rons, and I am now part of the Royal House of Noir as Aisha Noir. That's kind of like my first time actually taking a name as well, too, for myself. I walk any category that I have the courage and the gall to walk in. I've done commentator versus commentator once. I'm gonna try and do that some more, but I'm mostly known for Vogue Femme, some runway categories, and I'm trying to do face once in a while. But yeah, Tina's hard to beat, so.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And I want to give a big shout out to TRJ Bridges. They are providing ASL interpretation today. And right now you are seeing Trisha, and we have Mac with us today. So thank you all so much. They're on the East Coast, so they up late right now. So give them some love and some energy. I know that East Coast time. Stefan, I wanted to start with you and just give like a brief overall history. And I know the history is really deep of the ballroom scene in case people don't know. I want to like kind of layer the conversation with that foundation.
I guess really quickly, I will say that the scene has evolved through multiple iterations of mobilization and advocacy efforts on the part of Black and Latinx trans persons. And what we've seen so far from the academic and sort of oral history that's been documented by several scholars, including Derek Prada Ebony, is that the true roots of ballroom date back into the 1800s. But more contemporarily, what we see is the movement that has evolved into the current sort of iteration of ballroom that's starting back in the 50s and the 60s. Many people may have heard the name Crystal Abeja as an example, and she is sort of considered the modern day or the founder of the modern day ball culture. And it was the discrimination, the rampant and consistent discrimination that she experienced in participating in the drag balls that really gave way to the formation of these other competition events that later became known as balls, as well as the creation of houses to support that. So what we've seen is the evolution of this scene out of the New York area and move over into other areas of the country, as well as internationally. We've also seen, and I think the representation here is a demonstration of this. We've also seen the scene sort of mature in a way that allows, I would say, offshoots or extensions of the scene to occur. One of those extensions is the WBT scene, which is focused on women, butch, and trans persons.
Yes.
And that scene was developed out of the sort of out of the seemingly erasure of those communities in mainstream ballroom. And the other scene that has been created from the mainstream scene is called the Kiki scene, which has roots dating back to also the 80s and 90s in New York, as well as Philadelphia. So the evolution of the Kiki scene is significant. I would say that the Kiki scene was mostly started as an outreach strategy for community-based organizations seeking to build relationships with the ball community. And it's evolved into really a scene of its own. There are, there are annual awards balls and ceremonies for the Kiki scene. The Kiki scene, at least in other areas of the country, has its own legends and icons, as an example. So I think the Kiki scene is pretty mature, though it is still very much growing, both here and other places as well.
Awesome. Thank you so much for that. So I'm gonna start off. I asked the panel, do we want to jump in or do we want to be light about it? But I do want to start off in this manner. What is exciting in the community right now? Like, what are you all looking forward to? What's getting you excited about what's happening inside of the Northwest? And just raise your hand, whoever wants to challenge that first. Carla Rons, go.
I can start. I think in just the past few months, what's really excited me is the formation of so many new houses, specifically in the Kiki scene here in Seattle, and I think a catalyst for that is current events, and with COVID and with the Black Lives Matter movement and all of this stuff, and people are really experiencing a lot of trauma and hurt this year. And I think that has caused our community to come together. And because of social distancing, we're doing it in a way where everyone is in these small groups, and we've all been caring for each other in that way. And we've seen houses that have always been kind of groups of friends actually coming together, to make a statement and a presence in the ballroom scene. And so I think the birth of new houses and these and actual houses for the real reason that houses began was community and caring for each other. That part of the scene here in Seattle, I'm excited for that to continue to grow.
Awesome. Thank you very much. And I want to go back to Dr. Stefan and just say thank you for that history. It's important for you all to research and do the work yourself. If you see the Cash Apps and the Venmos, they're giving you some information. Right now, you're taking a master class. So drop them some coinage. So Dr. Stefan is full of knowledge on so many things. So is everyone else. Drop them some coinage. I just wanted to throw that in there. Anybody else that wants to answer that question? What are you excited about in the Northwest scene?
I'm excited. I'm excited just about kind of tech along what Coloran said. I'm excited to kind of find out how the Northwest can just grow into its own thing. We definitely, like, we're so grateful for Stefan, and like he's like I call him the godfather of the Pacific Northwest. Like, he's really just like nurtured so many of us here on this panel. Like, he's like seen us grow from babies. It's so kind of like wild, and like to think like we're kind of like in a space where we're actually like learning from and like applying. And so I'm just like, it's really exciting to see again like all the houses coming together, being actual houses and not just being for the competition part of the Kiki scene. Like, I'm seeing the community really coming together, especially during COVID, which is really nice. Because it wasn't necessarily like that all the time, and so now we're kind of like forced to be like, hey, yes, but real shit's also happening. So let's also keep that in mind, and let's keep that glued together, because everything else is extra. Like, I want to make sure that we're still here in 2022. You know what I mean? And so like, we've really been coming together in ways that has been really hopeful and helpful for me and motivating for me to, want to keep pushing and treading along. So it's been really nice.
Thank you, Aisha. What is different in the Northwest scene as, like, say, the East Coast? What's different? What's challenges? What's exciting? What's beautifully different? What's challengingly different? Yes, Tina.
Okay. I would say from firsthand experience, my first time going to New York and witnessing OTA weekly and seeing what the balls are like there was a completely different ball game. Honestly, like it was at that moment, like like coming into ballroom, there's always so much respect that goes into mainstream and the way that things are operated there. But coming from the Kiki scene and the way that we run and facilitate and the way that we value certain things and I'm going to just say identities and the way that people present themselves is not necessarily seen the same in New York. When I got to go to New York for the first time, I was a part of the Priscilla Beja organizing youth fellows, and they brought me to New York to go to the Heritage Ball, and I got to meet a bunch of wonderful houses and honestly see the community firsthand. And honestly, my experience was shocking. Like, it was crazy how different the girls operate, how different the scene operates. Like, it's a whole different ball game. I mean, at the same time, we all do the same thing at the end of the day, and we all are here for the community work and the leadership. But it's definitely two separate things, and it is something that I hope that we can challenge and eventually conquer, which I definitely think is capable. But it's amazing, and it's an eye opener for sure.
Awesome. Thank you. Anybody else? Somebody. Everybody quiet. Swamp. Swamp Daddy, let's go.
Yeah, I don't have much experience in the Kiki scene on the East Coast or the mainstream scene on the East Coast, but what I do notice about the scene in Seattle is that there's a lot more inclusiveness, like gender inclusiveness. So there's kind of this emphasis on like including like non-binary folks, gender fluid folks. And I think that that's something that like we're continuing to have conversations about, like what it looks like to do that, but then to also uplift the experiences of trans folks or folks who are functioning within the binary, while also respecting folks who don't function within the binary. And so, yeah, that's something that I think that is kind of unique to the Pacific Northwest, although in Sao Paulo, that's also something that they do. Like they also include like non-binary folks and gender fluid folks, like have a lot of open to all categories. And Stefan, I'm not sure, maybe you can speak to this more, like if Kiki scenes like are more, do that more often than in the mainstream. But yeah, that's something that I feel like, yeah, is very unique to the Pacific Northwest Kiki scene.
Yes, Dr. Stefan.
Yeah, I agree that the conversation around gender identities is definitely a more mature conversation in the Kiki scene in other places around the country than it is in the mainstream scene. I think that in the Kiki scene, particularly on the East Coast, that there's been a little bit more movement to integrate gender identities outside of the binary into categories than the mainstream. I think the mainstream is also an older scene. It was sort of how ballroom started. And I think that the conversations around people sort of living and existing outside the binary are conversations that are relatively new to not just in terms of our language, but to in terms of many people's awareness. And I recognize that, and this isn't to minimize people's lived experiences who identify in that way, but I think that that the conversations have sort of been isolated in communities and in cities or areas of the country where the large populace of people who participate in ballroom are they don't live in those areas. Right. So yeah, I think that there's some that there's some movement happening. The conversations are happening in mainstream ballroom. You know, I'm a part of many of the groups. You know, I connect with many of the overall parents of different houses and leaders, and I know that these conversations are happening. So yeah, I just want to acknowledge what Swamp said about the movement of this region and the work that's been done to be more intentional about integrating and being more inclusive of persons who identify outside of the binary.
So I'm gonna rip the band-aid off. What are the issues with realness? So this is called ballroom realness. We have categories that center around realness and the thought processes with realness. Why do they exist? And also, what are the problems with that? Because I know I'm from Detroit, and in the ballroom scene, realness was a part of it. And being in Seattle in the Northwest, there's a change. There's a movement to say like this realness category should be changed, or we should have other categories to include more gender variant people. So let's start with that because we're like brushing it and we're touching it, but let's talk about realness, the issues with realness, why realness exists. I think Stefan, you and I are around the same age. I think also realness was also about safety. We around the same age. I didn't say what age that was. I said around the same age. I didn't give away an age. I just said around. So I'm careful. I'm not about to like tell nobody else's age. But I think back there was a point in time where realness and the presentation of realness was about safety and living. Does that still exist today? Do we still need the idea of realness? When we look at polls and we look at especially trans women, Black trans women, and who's being put in the media, it is this idea of a very cis looking, presenting person. So I just kind of want to open it up there, and who wants to dive into that one? Y'all got these questions, so don't act like it's a surprise. Everybody like, Dr. Stefan, go.
So I think a few different things. I think that I also think that there's some confusion about realness in this region of the country with respect to folks who participate in the Kiki scene. And I think that there is, and if I could go back actually, I'm not sure that it's fair to characterize the concerns as issues or to characterize them as sort of what's wrong with realness. Because I think that sort of, I think that positions the conversation and the category in a different sort of light and context. But I do think that the category historically has meant different things for different people. Realness for some people was about passability in terms of their current gender identity, particularly for persons who were trans femme, and for drag queens who wanted to present as women. And even I would even say for butches, so for masculine presenting women. So, but for cis men, realness is not about gender identity, it's about sexual orientation. And it's about being able to sort of be passable and not being clocked as gay or bisexual. And I think that survival was certainly a part of the context of realness and its origination, but I also think that it was about, in some ways, being able to blend in with what was perceived to be normal or, regular culture, without having to be, you could live in a space where you didn't have to be subjected to the negative stereotypes and the taunting and the violence and everything that sort of is associated with not being a cisgender heterosexual person in this country. And I think that to extend my comment from before, and since we're taking the Band-Aid off, I will offer that And I've said this to many of you in different spaces, and I think all of you at some point, that I think that realness in of itself is a category that makes sense to me to continue because of the history and legacy of the category. You know, there were people who spent time whose lives were lost as a result of centering and upholding this community, who walked realness. And I think part of the legacy of them is those people who want to continue to do so. I do think that it makes sense to me why, well, it makes sense to me why a person who identifies as non-binary would not want to walk realness. But it does not make sense to me if a person who identifies as non-binary would want to walk realness. So I think part of what the goal is, if we're talking about being inclusive, is to create space that supports everyone. You know, I happen to be aware that there are trans women in the Pacific Northwest, as an example, who want to walk realness categories because they live on the binary. And so I think it's important to continue to ensure that the categories that are created at balls by those who host balls, winking at some of you all, include categories that can that will allow, you know, access and inclusivity of everyone. My concern and fear is that in the process of seeking to center non-binary persons because of the exclusion of those persons in typical and traditional ballroom contexts, that we end up erasing those persons in ballroom who want to exist in the binary. So I'll stop there.
Thank you for that. Anybody else want to add in their thoughts? Who have we not heard from? You.
I'll go. I identify as non-binary, trans femme, and my dysphoria for me is not connected into my body in that way to where I want to exist in a binary, right? And I've always had comments about the realness category, not because I have an issue with people living within the binary. I have an issue with the word realness and how we associate it with cis-passing trans women, and specifically Black trans women, because I feel like what makes a cis-passing trans person more real than a person who exists and doesn't want to or feel like they should change anything about them in that surgical way that we always center realness in. I feel like it's kind of harmful for Black trans women, you know, because for me, passing for me is anti-Black. And this is why, because we call Black cis women trans women for looking too muscular, too big, to whatever outside of this soft, dainty femme thing. And so I feel like if anyone's gonna say that I'm not real, I'm not passing, I feel like you're saying that I'm too Black to exist as a woman. And these words mean things. Like, if this is real, does that make me unreal? Does that make me confused? Does that make me in a limbo? And so I'm all for, you know, honoring the Black women that, again, that still have to, right? Because Seattle is a different area, right, than the South, than the East Coast, than California even. And so I think area is also something to take into play, geographic region. You know, we're kind of surrounded by white people here. And so that's maybe has allowed for some type of, you know, wiggle room for us to make things work for us over here versus, again, East Coast, the South, California. And so, yeah, my question is, does Ballroom want to talk about that? You know, does mainstream want to talk about how some of these girls go to the lengths to get these things done just to walk in a category? And then when you get it done, do you feel real? You know, like, is it about looking real or is it about feeling real? And I want to know what the two are. And I'm hoping that we can maybe feel real in Ballroom versus trying to look real, And because I also feel like it doesn't make sense for a trans woman to look at another trans woman and say that you're not woman enough when other people tell them that they're not woman enough. It feels like it's always like someone's trying to have power over someone. And I feel like non-binary people and gender variant people are often at the bottom of getting all of everything that we want to uphold. That's it.
Yes, Carl, Laurence.
Yeah, I wanted to just add a different, of course, another perspective, but I think a lot of the confusion too with realness categories is that when you come into it, a lot of times I think people are nervous to walk or scared to walk because they think that it's going to be extremely judgmental and harsh, and there definitely are balls where it can be that way. But I think what's really beautiful about the Pacific Northwest and our Kiki scene here is that when we did, or it was at Black Trans Pride, there was a realness category that Swamzadi put together for that ball. And it was I think everyone's favorite category that attended. It was we made, the most tips for those people that walked. And it was so celebratory and so beautiful. And I think that a lot of people weren't expecting that, myself included, because I know it is an area of controversy, if you will, and so, or area for debate. So going into it was, wasn't sure how it would go. But I think that can be one of those misconceptions where you think it's going to be, this thing where you're telling people who's real and who's not. And again, those situations exist, but our scene in particular is so supportive. I think that we are doing something new here that we've already touched on that I think is worth continuing this conversation and seeing how we can bridge the gap and bring this, and scale it to a bigger level and include everyone without excluding anyone, That's it.
Thank you. Anybody else want to comment on that? The ideas of realness. Yes.
Okay, hello. Okay. I'll definitely want to piggyback on honestly what all three of our panelists had said before.
No,
can you guys hear me?
mask.
Am I muted? Hello? Hello. Hi. The face queen reveals herself. Okay, so I'm gonna say, I want to piggyback specifically on what Randy had last mentioned, where with this category, to honor what Stefan said, this category is so monumental for many trans women, especially gaining experience on starting their transition and at least setting I can't speak for all the girls, but some girls, view this category and they view it as oh wow, that these women are inspirations, and then they take that in. But at the same time, with the joy of this category and where we are now in the scene, and with the honest deep talks about gender and gender identities and expressions, I feel like there's a lot more to offer now. And I feel like what it really comes down to is that for us trans women in Ballroom, which Ballroom was created for and founded by, I feel like there needs to be more categories for the girls other than just that. Because there's face is cute, but anyone walks face. But realness is for the girls, by the girls, or perfect tens. But yet again, these are still categories where we are putting women in views of competition of, oh, this one can be out in the day and this one can't. And it's these are lovely conversations, but at the end of the day, white people actively think of us this way 24/7. They're actively calling Black women mannish, or I just watched a video of a hair tutorial on YouTube the other day, and some white girl said that this girl looked like a gorilla, and their only comeback was she looks better in real life. But I'm why are we saying this when we should really saying that this is a microaggression when white people call Black women gorillas or manly in general? That's not cute. That's not building or boosting anyone's purpose in life. You can get your body done to fit the ideas of these already Eurocentric standards of what beauty is supposed to look like. and you do all of this, but then you do have to sit there and ask yourself in the mirror, just like, am I happy? Is this what I want? Is this really what I wanted for me? Or is this what I wanted to survive? Is this what I wanted just to fit in and have my seat at the table? You know, I feel like it's a lot deeper question than like, I don't feel like it's like there's something wrong with realness. I do think that where it came from and their intentions when it started was wonderful, but I feel like where we're at now in the progression that we're making as a society, as far as like being woke and understanding that like the struggles that Black women face, Black women and Black trans women, like we face the same struggles, we face the same oppressors. The whole reason why Ballroom was founded was to basically get away from that and to really have our own thing for us, by us. So why are we bringing those same Eurocentric standards to our own places? And why are we using those standards as what we judge by? Like, I think that that's also another conversation, but like, it's sad. And I feel like there should be more opportunities for trans women to walk and feel pretty and feel wanted and feel deserved in their community, other than just realness or perfect tens. Like,
Stefan, yes.
I just want to add that, and I appreciate the centering of trans feminine women in this conversation, but there are certainly other people who walk realness categories in other genders. And so I think, you know, there are cis men who walk realness categories of different kinds. There are, you know, trans men who walk realness of different kinds. There are, you know, butch women who walk just like drag queens walk realness. And so I think, again, and I don't think that we're going to solve this in this conversation, but I think that if we're going to look to address realness, then we need to think about how to address it holistically and sort of globally, and not just the aspect of it that's focused on trans women, because that to me is what I think a lot of people are responding to, is that it feels very targeted towards, you know, to trans women. And if these, and I'm not a trans woman, but if trans women are saying they want to walk these categories, these are the categories that affirm them. Like, whose responsibility is it to say that you shouldn't be affirmed by these categories, one? And whose role and responsibility is it to say that, you know, these opinions about, you know, white supremacy and, you know, all these other sort of social constructs and the overplay and interplay that they have in our society are or are not real for these women who want to walk these categories? Like, that to me is where I sit. Like, is it me to say that these things that these women are telling me aren't real for them? Is it me to say that, you know, these women shouldn't be validated, or these people generally shouldn't be validated to be able to walk these different categories if this is what they want to do? And the other thing I will add is that, to me, the social dynamic and conversation around white supremacy exists all throughout Ballroom.
Yes.
It exists in the way that people walk face. It exists in the people walk runway. So if we're going to unpack and really dissect how this looks in one particular category of one particular gender, we need to do it across the board. Like, we need to look at we need to look at people who put hair into their heads, particularly if it's a if it's a texture that's not theirs naturally. We need to, we really need to, if we're going to unpack this, we need to do so holistically and not focus on this one area, is all I'm saying.
Right. Randy, I know you want to talk. I'm going back to like me and an introduction to even just queer culture and going to the clubs, and that there was also an aspect of fantasy that existed. We could be who we wanted to be. As we become more conscious, are we also taking the fantasy out of it also? Like, where does fantasy exist inside of realness, inside of these categories? And again, I think people need to be affirmed how they need to be affirmed. But yeah, just fantasy keeps popping into my head. I think that's also a part of ballroom culture too, is fantasy. And how do people want to live out their fantasy on the runway, through the dance, through the culture? But Randy, go ahead. I know you want to speak.
Hello.
Yeah.
Instagram. Okay, great. Sorry, I was clicking the banners. I was gonna say, I think it's we talk about it more in centering of trans women because trans women are dying more at the rate than other people, and a lot of it has to do with how they look as women, you know, like. And I think that's the reason why it keeps coming to the focus, because Black trans women are dying, you know? And I'm not saying that people, you know, masculine of center folks don't also die at the same rate or if not more, but like this attitude towards realness affects my like social life. Like a lot of girls won't hang out with non-binary people because, you know, like they'll be seen, right? Or like it affects like, it's outside of that ballroom. It applies to work. It applies to, you know, access and resources. It applies to, yeah, like Tina said, that bag, you know, like, and so I think, you know, and again, like, and because misogyny, you know, and, you know, is also in there, I think it affects women or femmes more. And that's my.
Again, I just want to offer that I'm not a person of trans experience, so I am not presenting this information in any way, shape, or form as a person with lived experience in this way. So I can't speak for any person's experience in that regard. I will offer to expand on my prior point and to respond to what you just said, Aisha, my love. I'm concerned about the idea that a category is the reason why Black women are being murdered, and sort of the association of that. I think the reason why Black trans women are being murdered is because of sexism and misogyny, and like all these other things that are permeating our culture. I guess I'm not sure that I can agree with the jump or the association that Black women wanting to walk this category is the reason why they're dying. Like, I think that these social dynamics that are playing out that are putting Black women at risk, Black cis women and trans women, but trans women is the conversation now, for violence, you know, for sexual assault, and for all of these other issues, to me says more to do with the patriarchy that exists in our culture and the way it's unchecked, and less to do, in my mind, with the idea of this category.
Thank you for that, and thank you all. And this conversation is not to save the world. It's really to start conversations that are not happening inside and more expansive inside of community. And so this is one way to do it. And thank you all for that perspective. I wanted to bring in, we talked about whiteness for a second and the ideas of European standards. I'm just going to, how does blackface show up in ballroom community if you are not a Black person? A lot of times, this notion this week for me is like, we invite people to the picnic and then we say, bring the potato salad, and they put raisins in it. And then we get mad. And so there are times where I feel like this space is a space for Black folks to talk. And I could have invited anybody into this, but for me, it's really important for Black people to one, be in space and talk to each other and talk about these things. And sometimes some folks need to just listen and not actually sit at the table. They need to sit back. So when I look at that and people get upset because culture is being appropriated, and people are being shut out of culture, sometimes we invite blackface in. And I'm not putting the blame on Black folks, but we do that because we are generous with culture. We are generous with who we are. But going back to like, how does blackface show up in the Northwest? I'm talking about the Northwest because we all live here. We know what goes on out here. And let's be honest, because also and I know, look, everybody, look, I told y'all, we gonna jump. I also want folks that are not Black to understand that a lot of times when you show up in blackface and you may not know that you're doing it, it is also a harmful act to Black bodies. This is not a performance for us. How we live and how we move in our life is not a performance. So when you get to perform it on the runway and you get to take it off in your regular life, we don't get to do that. So before you hit the runway, before you hit those steps, I want you to really process and think about, am I performing blackface or am I showing up as myself? So I'm opening up the door. Go. Everybody quiet now. Pastor Flora, we have not heard from you. I don't want you to just sit there and be cute. You're beautiful, but we need to hear you. Let's go.
Let's go. No, yeah, I wanted to sit back for a second, but this one I think I have a unique perspective on because there was a few years where I was throwing balls. And from that perspective, I think there was multiple things that I experienced as an event producer in that aspect. And then also as someone just witnessing on the mic, a lot of them was, or who rather, was walking onto the stage. And I think one of the struggles was not having enough education built into the actual ball. I noticed was something that I look back onto the past and wish that there was a lot more of. And so that's one thing to go back to one of the first questions about what I'm excited for is to see the new ways that we as a community are able to put education into each and every ball. So as you come, like how do you connect resources with the people coming to ball? But specifically to this question, I mean, it was mentioned earlier, people coming onto the runway with hair extensions out their head that are not natural to them. We see people putting on certain characteristics that they might emulate from a sassy Black woman, if you will. We see a lot of, those are probably some of the most popular ways that I see presented here in the PNW, at least at the ball, you know?
Right. And I think this is a call for action for people to, if you, especially in this time where once the end of May hit and June came, people were supporting Black lives. This is also a call for action for people that in these scenes to really support people and how do you show up in that. So thank you for that about like education. Anybody else want to chime in about blackface? And again, if you are in houses with these people and you are not Black, it is really about you doing the work to make sure that you support the folks in this house because they will be more targeted to violence than you will. Who wants to speak? I'm sorry. Tina? Shay? Yes, darling.
Okay. So with my personal experience, I haven't witnessed anything in America. But child, when I went up to Canada for my first ball, I witnessed blackface, a form variant of blackface, in their bizarre category. They had so it was like a sport themed ball, and their bizarre category was balls, and just bring it as a bunch of whatever sports balls, I guess. You were there with me, Flora, and at first I paid it because like I was like, okay, child, they just doing what they want to do, but they made like a body out of balls, and they had like a fake ass with basketballs, fake hip pads with balls. Like the thought of it was cute. Like it was bizarre for sure, tens for bizarre, but like as a whole, also thinking of representation for Black women and how, especially we were viewed back in the day with our body portions, with Black women being literally in museums, their dead bodies on display for white people to view, their big hips and their big ass. And I don't know who called this out, but someone on Instagram had called them out for it because it was just like, you're literally just, it's appropriating the idea, the image of what a woman with round natural curves and assets are, and it was given very that, and it wasn't. I think the crowd it was receptive well, but like everyone that, as far as I saw, and getting to see the engagement that it brought it wasn't cute. Like it really wasn't cute. I haven't seen much more things in ballroom other than that. One thing other than I'll piggyback off of, like, I've seen hair being worn in runway, and I don't know if it gives them the sass or the nerve that they need to walk, but like, you shouldn't be reliant on that to be you. Like, it's not given. Like, if you have to create it to be it, like, it's not, and especially in a category what doesn't call for it, it's not necessary, and it's not cute.
And I know, Stefan, you want to talk, and Swamp, we'll get to you also. I also want to say that it does not just have to show up on the runway. Blackface shows up in many different forms, especially within queer communities, especially how non-Black people interact with other Black people in those spaces. So it's not just about being on the runway. I just wanted to throw that out there. But Stefan, let's have you go, and then Swamp, let's have you go. Yes.
I just wanted to add to that. Like, I thankfully have never seen anyone in my physical presence actually show up in some place in blackface because yeah. But I think that I have seen, like, the attitude, the mentality, and the perspective that informs people showing up in blackface. I've seen that in the Pacific Northwest. I've seen that in Seattle. You know, I pulled up on a few people in their inboxes when white people want to come in and do stuff related to ballroom. And I know many people think, you know, they might find my approach harsh and abrasive. But the reality is that I don't trust white people to have an appropriate barometer about what it means to be appropriate. And so, to me, they have zero capacity to understand what it means to appropriate ballroom culture or any other culture that does not authentically belong to them, which is not much. And so, when I hear that white folks are wanting to throw balls and wanting to have like ballroom stuff connected to their event that's not a ball, but they somehow want to center it as celebrating ballroom culture, to me, it reads as bullshit. And to me, it's like blackface, period, point blank. Like, centering ballroom is centering ballroom, not centering your pockets, not centering queer communities, not centering drag culture. They're different. Centering ballroom means centering ballroom. You want to put ballroom people on display as an act. This to me is reminiscent of white people, again, dressing up in blackface, entertaining other white people. And to me, it just reads as all kinds of fucking wrong. And anytime that I'm going to see it, anytime that I get a whiff of it, I'm going to respond, and it may not be nice. But listen, we don't want no raisins or grapes in a potato salad. Okay? Okay? Period.
Swamp, go ahead, take it.
Yeah, and actually, Dr. Stefan, that reminded me of a conversation we had. When I was putting together the Wonderland Ball, I wanted to have a Banshee category. And I think I might have mentioned this to you, and it was just like a no. We don't think folks in the PNW are going to understand that, are going to respect that, because people in the PNW, and really, I mean, like, in the PNW, but also all over the world, you know, we got mainstream houses in different countries, and they're definitely appropriating styles from the African and Latinx diaspora, and it's not okay. But yeah, in the PNW, a lot of times, I mean, I've seen balls where there's not a lot of Black people. Like, we literally have to say, like, this is an all Black category. Like, that's something that folks in Portland have done, and something that, you know, we have to explicitly name, because people here that are not Black, that are not brown, like, just take up so much space unapologetically. And that's not okay. And I think that, like, so much of ballroom, so much of the aesthetic of ballroom does come directly from Black and brown culture. And so for folks to participate in that and to be okay with, like, there not being a lot of, like, Black folks, I'm going to say Black folks specifically, like, showing up and participating in that category, that's not okay. That's being complicit in some anti-Black bullshit. So, like, yeah, for me, I think that it happens a lot, and we're also like collectively within the Kiki scene, I think that we're starting to talk about it and address it in the ways that we like organize the balls or call for specific things in certain categories. Maybe not enough, but we're starting to do that. Yeah, so yeah, and I absolutely agree. Blackface shows, to me, it's blackface when you come and you show, you're a white person showing up in some fucking and some cornrows and some motherfucking like that's, and you come, and then you come in, there was a drag category where someone came with some booty pads, hip pads, they were white. That shit was not okay. And the other thing is that we don't, I feel like Stefan, thank you like for calling, for going in people's inboxes, but I also think we need to be calling people out explicitly to their face right there, because I feel like a lot of times like we'll look at it and be like we might chop them. Like I've seen that happen, like someone show up and it not be acceptable and then we chop them. But I think also like coming up to people and having a conversation and being like, look, like that is not okay. And I also think that because like there's not a lot of Black folks here, like maybe we feel like we need to have more of an alliance with like non-Black folks. Like I don't really know what it is, but I definitely want there to be more explicit like conversations being had in the fucking moment to address that shit, because it's not okay.
And I know, yes. Thank you, Swamp. I know, Aisha, you want to talk. I want to throw another layer on top of that. Swamp, you talked about like calling people out. When does the interruption happen? Because I think also I've been thinking about so many things of like how we align ourselves within this idea of whiteness. And so we don't want to interrupt that, but then we go talk to our friends and say like how upset we are and how this happened. And my question is, did you interrupt it? Well, no, because we don't want to hurt anyone's feelings. But again, Black people receive so much pain and so much hurt, and we're also afraid to interrupt. So I'm gonna have you go, Aisha. My question is, where does the interruption happen? Does it happen in the midst of the ball when it's just like, yo, great, you just did something that was anti-Black and this is why? Does it happen inside of the houses where people are with their houses and they're talking about these subjects of anti-Blackness? But Aisha, go.
You know, okay, so your new question just had a new answer, Danny, thank you. But to tackle onto just another layer of where Blackface shows up, it also shows up in the dance studios where these white people are teaching Vogue, Femme, haven't won their Licka category, saw Pose twice and thought they could duck walk and teach Black trans people how to do all the things. So I just wanted to add that also shows up, in dance studios. It also shows up in our in shows like Pose, that aren't, again, it's a great show. I love it. But there's some problematic moments in it as well. I can also critique it as well and say it's a good show. But when do we check anti-Blackness is a good question. There was a moment that actually recently kind of happened within the scene where there was a post made on Facebook, and within the comments, there was a non-Black person calling trans people bricks. And I did not have it. People in the scene went over, all the words of all these things, and like the person who made the post didn't check it. And so I let the post go, and I contacted the person directly and was like, hey, I know that, you weren't intending on this or this was that, but I saw this and I didn't appreciate it. And you as a leader, I expected more, you know what I mean? And like, it was a whole thing where there was a statement about who rules Seattle. And there was, that's the number I'm gonna put in there. But also it's almost like, why did I have to go do it? And how come no one in the post did it? And it's like, I think confronting things then and there often gets put on the people who are at the brunt end of the violence, and that's unfair. It shouldn't always have to be us. It should be these allies, these white people, these non-Black people, these, supporters, people who hire trans people and Voguers saying like, you want to come Vogue for us and all that. It's like, it needs to happen from all of those people who say they support us, and not us. Like, yes, I can check someone, but Stefan can check someone in their inbox, but like, what is the culture doing around them? Is the culture still perpetuating? Is it saying, oh, it's fine, they were just angry, don't worry about it, whatever. But it's like, I think there needs to be a lot more onus on the collective versus the individual confronting whatever anti-Blackness, phobia, anything ism.
Thank you. And again, I want to go back to the question of like, where does interruption happen? We can inbox people, we can pull them to the side, but when it's happening in real time, where does the interruption happen? Do we talk to our houses? Do we say like, yo, this is what we're going to stand on. If Black lives matter, if Black trans lives matter, this is not how we're going to show up to the ball. Stefan, go ahead.
Yeah, I just wanted to say something that I had put in the chat, but I thought, I should say it just to make it clear for everyone who doesn't see the private chat. I have never been approached by white folks about, integrating ballroom culture into their activities or events or anything. First of all, I don't think they're that bold, but I think, my pull-up has been for ballroom leaders here to recognize your power, to recognize your strength, and to recognize that just because people want to give you a coin does not mean that you need to go and perform. I mean, there's all kinds of racial tropes associated with that. I don't need to like hash any of those, but we don't need to do that. The community is powerful by itself. And if they really want to be a support, they're going to give the damn money anyway, whether you do any work with them or not. So.
Right. Yes, Swamp, go ahead.
I was just gonna mention that some white people came into my inbox the other day asking for Arcadia to teach them. They wanted to learn about the history of ballroom, and then they said that they wanted us to teach them some dance moves and to have a party using the dance moves after that. And these are so the white, they getting bold, y'all. They getting bold.
Getting?
Yeah. And I feel like that happened. Sorry.
No, keep going. I was just saying getting bold. They've been bold. Like,
yeah. They've been bold. I feel like that happened. Stefan, that happened when they approached saying that they were gonna have a ball and have a dance competition. Like So I just wanted to talk about the fuckery. That's all. I'm done.
Tina, Shay, I know you wanted to speak. Go ahead, darling. Let's unmute you. Somebody. Tina, can you unmute yourself, please? Thank you, love. There you go.
Not me unmute myself so I can tag along in the white fuckery that's been happening. So tell me why. So before I got to join this call, I had just did a cute show for Native and Indigenous Black Joy. It was a cute festival that happened today at Jimi Hendrix Park. Shout out to everyone that hosted that and everything. It was really cute. But this white lady wanted to come up and ask me while I'm in the food line at all of our events and stuff in Seattle. We usually have vendors and a lot of lovely stuff like that. I wish I knew their names so I could plug them. But anyway, waiting in this line for this food. And I carry signs with me when me and my house performs just to get crowd engagement and so they can see what's going on, our cash app, stuff like that. So in my sign, I write, the first house in the Pacific Northwest started and founded by a Black trans woman. This white lady wants to turn around in the food line, ask me, she goes, oh, have you guys fact checked this? If I look it up, can I Google fact check this? Child, when I tell you, RIP headphone users, when I tell you, they be having nerve and they don't see nothing wrong with it. I had to tell her, Miss Mary, we helped found the scene. And still to this day, there's only 2 houses in the whole Pacific Northwest, Washington, Canada, and Oregon. That's Pacific Northwest. LA, we love you, but y'all not Pacific Northwest. Northwest, up north. In these 3 houses, there's only 2 Black women with houses. It's me and my sister, Lady Giselle Tournament. She's the only one. Us 2. And I'm so happy for Swamp Zaddy. You are our other Black woman that can own a house and have leadership. And that's something that, like, I have not got to see in our community. And even still, it's sad that, like, there's not more. But the white people are bold. And they don't find no problem with speaking the little mind, asking their questions, because it's just a question. You know, it's just innocent. I just want to know.
Mm-hmm.
But... chop.
And in this conversation, I also don't want to leave off the hook non-Black people and non-Latinx folks, because we know that the culture got started with Latinx and Black folks and Latinx and Black trans women. So I want to make sure it's like, this is about not leaving other folks off the hook. It's just like, oh, I'm a person of color, so I'm good. Like, it's not just about how white people show up in blackface. It's also about how others show up in blackface also. I just wanted to throw that out there. And again, I know many of you are in houses with a lot of our panelists. And again, it's up to you to educate yourself. You also don't want to put the burden of the people in the house to educate you on your thing. So I'm just, go ahead. Anybody, Pasa, Carla Rons, anybody want to chime in? Swamp, go ahead.
That's something that I want to ask to the other panelists who I respect so much. Where is the line? Like, where is the line drawn? Like, if so much of ballroom, like I even think about voguing, like so much of it is derived from Black culture, Latinx culture, like where do people come in and do it respectfully without it being appropriative, without it like being reminiscent of blackface? Like what are those like boundaries for y'all? And like, even if it's changing and if it's fluid, that's fine. But I'm just curious about y'all's perspective on that.
Ooh, so many hands. Let's go with Carla Rons because we haven't heard from them in a while. And then Tina, we'll get to you.
I think for me, it rolls into a shared life experience. You know, if you are living in the community that you are being involved in and you're having those same everyday experiences, then, you know, that shared experience, I think, is the line. You know, white people are just never going to know what it's like to be Black. They're never going to be able to fully know that like we know that. That's just it's not possible. But if you are constantly surrounded by members of the Black community, and that's where you're living, not just coming in and out as you see fit, but that's your community, your actual community. And that's not just white people, but, you know, any non-Black person, you know, then that awareness should be innate. You know, you wouldn't have to explain all of that as much because you're already gonna know that from your community. So I think that doesn't mean you can't participate in blackface still, but I think that gets you closer to the line. You know, that awareness is more built in. But I don't know that there is, to be honest, like a way to do it that's not, at least that I've really seen, you know, especially in the Pacific Northwest, because we're so new, all the ways that people want to be involved, it's just not really it.
And we're going to get to you, Tina. I want to say this. I'm someone that educates myself and teaches club and street dance. The thing about it is, enter it through your lived experience. And that's the thing that we're missing. Like, people aren't entering anything through their lived experience. They want to live someone else's experience. And then that's when violence and things happen. So again, not saying that you can't be involved in Vogue and Kiki scenes, but what is your lived experience? The minute you try to put on the persona of a Black woman, you've automatically got it wrong, even if you have that thought in your head, because Black women and Black women's identity is so expansive. And so that even being put in your head, I'm talking to non-Black people, and maybe some Black people, that's already starting the idea of violence, whether it's intentional or not. So just thinking about entering these things, what is your lived experience? Go ahead, Tina. We can't hear you, darling.
Not me talking on mute. Okay, I was gonna literally say what you just said. As far as it stands, like this is the only way that I've succeeded anywhere in ballroom from what I have done in my own path is be yourself, and that is the only advice I can give to white people. This might be hard advice because there's not a lot of things that they have on their own that they've invented other than taking from other people and other nations. But just be yourself, literally just be yourself and do what you do successfully. Think of what you do successfully and do it. And if you can't do it, learn it in the best way that you can, i.e., paying the Black people that are teaching, the people of color that are teaching these courses, pay them, learn from them, or find some POC people on YouTube that you can watch a tutorial. But like, you should be already showing up to these functions, to these balls. If you have the nerve to walk, you should have your own sense of confidence and your own sense of self to walk first. Like, you shouldn't have to be reliant on an outfit or a costume or a piece to be able to walk. Like, if you're that bitch and you're gonna walk to these judges and bring it, you need to bring it authentically as yourself. And there's no other way to do that. So if they can't do that, then don't walk.
Carla Rounds, I know you. I want to say this. What I've realized with a lot of people, putting on Blackness is a way for them not to deal with themselves, because people see Black folks as so strong and so resilient and so this and so that. So if we put on Blackness, we don't have to deal with how small we are inside of ourselves. I'm being blunt about it, so deal with that in therapy. Don't deal with it in me. But that's what it is. Carla Rounds, go.
Yeah, I just want to throw this out there because I don't think it has been. White and non-POC people don't have to be involved in the scene. And I think that is a thing that's definitely not talked. There's this ownership that I see, and a lot of times it's white people that want to be involved in everything, and celebrate other cultures. And that celebration can be you sitting at home and giving money towards the ball and not going. And that is support as well. And so I think that you don't have to show up, you don't have to walk to be involved in ball culture. You don't have to be present to be involved. And a lot of times that involvement is much more welcome than you being there. And so I think that should just also be on the table while we're talking about how people can be involved without appropriating. A lot of times it's just sitting at home.
And if you do show up, people go to the Seahawks game, pay their money, and they just cheer from the stands. I'm just going to say, you can go to the game and just cheer from the stands and pay the money. That's you don't see nobody running on field trying to catch a ball. And I know nothing about football. That's all I know. But you don't see folks from the stands running on the field trying to catch a ball. So sometimes you need to not try to catch that beat. So we're going to transition. Y'all know me. Y'all, if you don't know me, now you know me. I just try to do me. We're talking about blackface. I want to bring in a conversation that we really don't have. We don't talk about a lot of times cis Black women in the culture. And again, the negative stereotypes that come out through a lot of people, through the dance, through the culture, through the expression. So I wanted to really touch on that. We have about a half hour left. I was trying to cut this conversation in half, but it was really getting good because y'all are just dope as hell. So I was just like, wait, we can't stop. So I appreciate you all so much. I'm trying to find my question. What ways have the culture played into negative stereotypes of cis women and trans women? And does that show up? Again, we're just touching on things. And I'm specifically talking about Black cis women and Black trans women. And you can say like, no, it doesn't play any negative stereotypes. Tina, I can't with you. Ooh, everybody thinking on this one. Stefan, yes.
Yeah, I will say that that's a layered question.
Mhm.
There have been black cis women, definitely black trans women that have been in leadership
Mhm.
roles of different mainstream houses. Black women who are leading mobilization efforts in the community. My niece, Jennifer Barnes Balenciaga, is one of the co-directors of a national trans focused leadership development initiative that Tina Shea mentioned earlier. Yeah, that's layered. I think I think microaggressions are common in our community because of the environment, because our society and the way it's set up. Microaggressions, micro assaults for sure. But I don't know that I personally see, and I have to think about this more. I don't know if I see like visible ways that women, cis or trans, I guess one of the ways is that you know 70s, 80s, a lot more categories at mainstream balls were focused on women, cis and trans. And then, late 80s and 90s, that really shifted. And now you go to mainstream balls and it seems like most of the categories are for butch queens. I think that's one of the clearest ways that I think the scene has changed.
Thank you. And I want to throw in there that there is a relationship with Black cis women and queer people, and especially Black trans women, that is a very contentious relationship. And so I also want to throw that on top of it, that it's not like it's kumbaya and Black cis women are like, yes, these are our trans sisters. I bring that up also because again, blackface, and I'm seeing a lot of the phrase I hate the most is that there is a strong Black woman inside of me, and we know that that does not necessarily come from Black folks within the scene, but that does show up and that does come up, and then we see these stereotypes of what they think Black women are. So that's why I brought that into the conversation of just like even extracting this idea of like we're going to go for the banshee black woman, and not really understanding her purpose inside of our community. And then that's the only Black woman that gets pulled out. And I'm specifically talking about non-Black people again. Everybody's silence. I love it. I done stomped y'all on this question and this thoughts. Pasa, you wanted to add something? Please go ahead.
Cool. Yeah, I know we had moved on past the question, and I'll keep it really brief, but I did think it was important to bring up like that connection between ballroom and the way white folks enter it due to a lot of capitalism, as Stefan had mentioned. Pride season rolls around year round. There's just people trying to grab at what's becoming great. And as I've seen like the ballroom scene elevate through media and getting some attention, it's also something that more people want to grab onto and to like uphold their own sense of importance or relevancy in pop culture, if you will. But yeah, that's all I wanted to add.
Thank you for that. Thank you. I wanted to bring in this question also and have y'all ponder that other thought process. This question from one of the viewers: what impact has the Netflix show Pose have on this topic? Does it add or take away any thoughts? Tina, yes, Tina Shay. Unmute yourself, love.
I don't think Pose necessarily had added, nor do I think Pose necessarily took anything away from the conversation. I feel like, you know, they're in process of shooting a new season now, so we don't know what the topic is. But as far as the conversation of realness goes, I don't think Pose has ever talked about it at all. However, the only time that I did see the subject of changing your body for the, I don't know, approval of your peers and, you know, the rate of survival and everyone else in the outside world, that was when Candy walked Body and she was getting pumped, and then they talked about all of that, and then that whole storyline happened. That was the only conversation that I got to see, talking about how, you know, the inside view of like what the girls go through when they want to find better means of survival and passability, and whatever that looks like, defined by a category made up of a couple of judges who don't even really even walk that category, you know, like, so I don't think Pose did anything to add to it or took away, because the only category that was body, that was the only category that Candy walked. And yeah, no, they didn't add to it. The only way that they touched on that was by a completely different means, not even touching on the subject of realness. But there are some aspects that can be drawn and added, and I feel like there are some points that equate to each other, but not specifically, no.
Thank you. Aisha?
There we go, unmuted. I was still pondering your question about stereotypes perpetuated against cis and trans women, and the only thing that I maybe just like noticed is that there's not really any bigger girls on this panel. So I'm not sure what that experience entails when they see you. Like, I've seen like cis women walk Vogue Femme categories on YouTube, and I've seen them, you know, like get praised, you know, for like how skinny they are, just how, you know, effortlessly soft and just natural. You know, and they, you know, and I've heard commentators say, you know, this is, you know, what inspires a lot of, you know, this is what, you know, a lot of femme queens strive to be or something. So it's kind of like that comparison maybe, or like the pitting against of each other of like which version of femininity, I guess, can get the most whatever, like maybe like Pasa was saying, yeah, the most capital, the most attention, the most social something. That's the only thing I can think of as far as just like, it just isn't really, yeah, that's the only thing I can think of. Just being like, you know, women supposed to being appearing a certain way and then being praised for that appearance.
Touched on, go ahead, Caroline.
Sorry, I was going to go back to the question on Pose too. I think because it's, you know, based in the past, there's only so much that they could really, you know, touch on it. It's more like a base layer of a fictional story, you know, of the scene than, you know, like a full history lesson in ballroom, I would say. I do think I kind of disagree slightly with Tina, though. I think it added and subtracted to just the overall ballroom conversation in general, because of course you're getting more awareness. You are getting a lot of really great history and insight into the lives of, you know, Black and brown trans people during that time period in New York. But you're also getting, you know, the Hollywood watered down what we have to do to get ratings portion, because it's still Hollywood and it's still Ryan Murphy. So, you know, it's still at the top, you know, it's white people. So like, that's hard. It's really hard. It is adding and subtracting. But it would be interesting. I don't know if they're going to bring it to present day where they can, you know, dive into some of these issues and where ballroom's at now and what the future, and I don't know what the plans are for the show, but I think that that's something that that could add more and further the conversation.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Yes, please go, Pasta Flora.
Yes. So I think that was a really important thing that Carla mentioned, which was that pose. It's very much rooted in a system built on whiteness. So like the whole, the whole TV industry, if you will. And so I feel like that kind of makes me want to turn back around to like Black and brown youth and like the people who are actually seeing like pose on TV, they can relate to, be like, oh, like this is your thing that you have so much talent and more with, like, and cultivating like the youth and like the future possibilities as well. But I do still think that it's kind of I don't know. So I think it has like that dimension to it. Like it's good that some Black and brown kids are able to see that on TV and see themselves in it. Especially like I remember being younger and seeing like Laomi on America's Best Dance Crew and learning beyond that. So I think it's important to like allow youth to learn beyond the show, not just rely on the show.
Thank you. Aisha.
Yes, and I want to thank you for saying that, Pasa, because it did also bring something to mind that even in mainstream, and correct me if I'm wrong, Stefan, the goal isn't to stay in ballroom, right? The goal is to, be in ballroom, but then use your skills that you've learned to get into the outside world, right? And so I think that or it wasn't? Okay, thank you for correcting me. I think for one of the things for me is that pose does, I think, is that it makes people who, aren't like us and don't have our eyes and our whatever, think that all trans people need to be performers, artists, drag queen, all of the things. And I think that's kind of like almost a limiting thing as well. I know we're talking about ballroom specifically on this channel, but like, the amount of times I've heard people ask me or tell me, you look just like India Moore, I'm just like, what? Like I'm I'm a dance teacher. I teach in the elementary schools. You know what I mean? Like I also do other things, and so I think there's something about it. Yeah, like what? Never mind. I'm losing my train of thought. But yeah, I just wanted to. Stefan, can you maybe save that?
Yes.
Yeah, I just wanted to add that everyone's experience in ballroom is really unique and individualistic, and so certainly some people, I think about I think about the Tracy Africas who took their experience in ballroom and really helped to propel them in the modeling industry.
Yes.
I think about the Octavias of the world who sought to do that, and of course countless others. But many people see this as an extracurricular activity that has less bearing on sort of their career path or anything like that. Is something for them to do and participate in. So I think it's really individualistic.
Right. Thank you. We are going to begin to close out. Things that we did not touch on, again, because we don't have time, being HIV positive in the ballroom scene, that still exists to this day. And how is that supported? We ain't gonna get to it today. Expanding on Pasa Flora's conversation about capitalism, and we see things like Pose. We see there's a show on HBO that I don't know because I haven't watched it, but we see these things where Vogue is coming up. And it is a moneymaker, and it is making it okay, and I put that in quotation marks, to be queer and trans and entertain us. Not necessarily be in our family, be in our lives, but to entertain us. So we can put money behind you entertaining us, but we can't put money behind your survival. So we didn't touch on things like that. And I know I just opened up a whole nother can of worms. Maybe this calls for another panel down the line. Again, I am someone who participates in the dance. I'm not in the battles. I'm not in any house. I participate in the dance the way that I need to participate in the dance. I'm also of a certain age where I'm like, my body is not about to do what y'all about to do. But this culture and the people, the older, my elders, the queens, they sustained me. And so that's why this conversation is important to me. The culture of Vogue sustained me and sustained so many other people. Black people sustained me. And that's why these conversations are important. We did not have a whole bunch of people on the panel, and I know there's people with a bunch of opinions and why not me, why not me? Maybe that's again, and you all can also do this yourselves. I just want to always open the door because I think a lot of times we want to have these conversations. We don't know how, we're afraid who's going to be the one, blah, blah, blah. I have no investment in this. I just want Black folks to talk about what I'm seeing going on in the world. So I thank the panelists. Any last words before the last question that you all want to say, and anything?
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Yes, thank you so much for holding space for this conversation. Brought me so much light.
Yes.
Absolutely. Thank you. And I appreciate being on this panel with all of you.
Yeah.
This shared space has been amazing. You guys are all awesome.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you so much for having us. Make sure you come to our ball on the 31st, the Royal House of Noir. Donate to our Cash App, $, the Royal House of Noir. RSVP for the secret location.
Yes. I also want to say, again, if you are watching this in real time, or if you go back and watch the recording, we have posted ways that these panelists can get paid. They are educating you. They are talking about their experiences. I'm honored that they allowed me to hold space for that. And yes, they are getting paid for this panel. That's neither here nor there. They need to even get more money for the education that they brought. Again, how do we hold community? We make sure community is taken care of. If you care about this community and you care about these folks, sustain them through whatever it is that they need to be sustained through. Food, clothing, bills, whatever it is. So make sure you do that. Aisha, Dr. Stefan, Carl Laurent, Swamp, Pasa, Tina Shea. Thank you all. I just hope to be able to hold more space for you. I know my position and what I'm supposed to be doing in my world. So I hope that I'm able to hold more space for you all. I honor you all. I honor the work that you all are doing in the world, not just inside of the ballroom community, but I do pay attention. I don't say much, but I do pay attention. And so I really just honor the work that you all are doing. My last question is always wanting to end on joy, because we got to talk about it. We got to fight the negative with the positive. So my favorite question in the world is, what is your joy? Aisha, take it away because you're used to this. You used to this, girl. Don't do it.
But it's still like on the fly. I'm not used to it. Okay, anyway, my joy is always being in space with Black queer folks. I loved it here. This was the highlight of my Sunday. And also my joy is in these press-ons. Popcorn, Stefan.
My joy is the inspiration I feel from being around all of you amazing folks and the opportunity to share space, of course. My joy is also watching you all grow and really take all of this to the next level. I remember seeing many of you 5 years ago when some of this was just getting started, including Pasta Flora. So it's amazing to watch all of this grow. And I look forward to seeing where you all continue to take it. And I will popcorn it over to Swamp.
About to cry and shit, y'all. My joy is being in this space with y'all. I feel really honored. Y'all are incredible leaders in community, and to be able to share space and have this conversation with y'all and to be included is just a very honorable moment for me. So thank you. It's bringing me a lot of joy. And my joy is music and good food and pleasure, honey. I'm indulging in all of it. All of the hedonism and
Who you passing it to?
Yeah. Thank you. I'm passing it to Carla Ron, my raw honey.
My joy is being Black as hell. I am just so happy to be Black and proud and to be in community with so many amazing Black folks and Black queer people. That I'm just reveling in all of that. My joy is working on new music and being able to share that with community. And I know people are hungry for things to share and indulge in. So we're gonna indulge, honey. Yeah, and of course, this beautiful panel. I'm super honored and appreciative for the invitation. And who's next? Tina. I don't know if you believe
that. My joy is being authentically this loud, dark-skinned individual right here on your screen. Me being me 24/7 is what gives me joy. I don't know about y'all, but when y'all ask where Tina is, she's in her skin. When I hop out, you jump in. I just feel good being me, sharing this space, seeing all of my happy family here on this chat. Because at the end of the day, we're all fam. That's where all of this originates from. Like, we wouldn't be here without the close connections that we all have made on our own throughout this journey of ballroom and life and houses and parenting and leadership. Like, this all wouldn't have been done without the mutual respect and love for each other that we all share.
Thank you. Casa, Flora.
Wow, yes. Today my joy definitely resides in being able to share conversation with y'all and to bounce like that idea off of one another, especially during these times where we don't get to just like eat food together and go to a ball and digest afterwards. I miss that so dearly. So this is bringing me a lot of joy to just spend quality time with people that are very meaningful to me. So love you all.
Thank you. I want to again shout out TRJ Bridges for the ASL interpreters today, Mac and Trisha. Thank you. As we grow this platform, we are trying to make sure that we are more accessible to people. I am learning a lot. And so I appreciate them showing up. They're on the East Coast, so this is like about 10 o'clock, 11 for them. So we're going to let them go real soon because I know they're tired. But it's okay. Swamp, are you on the East Coast? See, you got the East Coast folks. I just want to end saying, putting these things together, when you reach out to people, you don't know if they're going to say yes and why you and all this other stuff. I'm grateful that you all said yes. I'm grateful that you all trusted me in this. You all always affirm what I'm supposed to be doing in my life and in my world. I believe in holding space for Black people. I believe in making sure Black voices are at the forefront of conversations, and I am blessed for this platform. My joy is being able to hear voices I normally don't hear, especially Swamp and Tina Shea Monet. Y'all, these are some really dope, intelligent, brilliant people. You have six brilliant people that outside of their talent just get to know the way that their brains work. Okay, they're gonna open up some things for you that you have not thought of. So please reach out to them. They're posted all over the socials in the ways that they're posted. Thank you all so much for this conversation. Have a beautiful night. We're going to have more conversations. This Wednesday, the living room is coming up with me and Randy Ford and J Mace III. You catch us pretty much every week. So I'm not going nowhere, but that's it. Please check out all of the houses in the Seattle and the Pacific Northwest. The ball is coming up on Halloween Day, secret location. RSVP for that. Bring your looks, mask, be safe out there. And I may do another little guest appearance. Who knows? Y'all know. Depending on time of day, what I got going on. I may do a little old guest appearance. Dr. Stefan, thank you again for giving us that brief history and insight in the beginning. So that's it. Bye, y'all. Bye. That's all I got to say.